Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to the landing. Welcome back to The Landing, where we celebrate the stories and people that make our community so special. Today, I'm joined by someone who is not only a familiar face down east, but often behind the scenes here at the museum. He's a beloved neighbor, a tireless volunteer, and someone who gives generously of his time and talents to preserve the heritage we hold dear. In today's conversation, we get to see a different side of him, though. We're talking about his love for cooking, where it came from, and the memories and traditions stirred into every dish he prepares. So pull up a chair, pour yourself something good, and join us for a warm and flavorful conversation that goes way beyond the kitchen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Landing. We have another treat for you this week. The young man that is sitting across the table from me is one that is going to surprise me, I know, because I had no idea that he was so knowledgeable and gifted at cooking and food and all this. So I can't wait to jump into this topic with him. But before we do any more, I want you to tell us your name, who's your crowd, and where you're from.
Yep. So my name's Kenny Brennan. My crowd is the Rose Clan, and if you ask, it's the Eastern Roses, not the Western Roses. I don't know if you've unpacked that on here yet.
Not yet, but I understand.
Yep. So and from Harker's Island. Grew up in Straits, but I do say I'm from Harker's Island because I spent more time there than anywhere else.
That's right. That's right. Well, welcome. I'm glad that you were able to join us today. And I didn't know. I've heard lots of good things about you, though, and I can't wait to pick your brain a little bit. So let's dive right in. When I'm going to start when you're little. Like when did your interest in cooking, and I can't just say food because everybody loves food, but like when did your cooking stuff start, interest there?
I would say probably 3 was when I first remember being in the kitchen, doing stuff with Granny. Really was where it started. And I remember probably the earliest memory I have of quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, cooking is with Annie, my Aunt Ann. And she would do caterings and stuff and do weddings and all of that.
Yeah.
And she had me sitting on the counter and she was peeling potatoes. And she had just finished peeling shrimp. And
you're on the counter, so you're
I'm
little.
set on the counter, yeah. I couldn't have been more than 2 or 3. So she had me there, and she had me set up, and I was, again, air quotes, helping. And I was making a concoction. I was making, I think I had potato peelings, shrimp heads, probably threw water or whatever else in there. She probably gave me a little bowl of flour or whatever, and I was sitting there having the best time.
Right.
And so that was probably the earliest that I remember. And then from then on, it was constant. I mean, it was just a fixture. I was enamored by being in the kitchen. She couldn't keep me out because I didn't give her any choice.
Right.
I respected the stove and oven from an early age. Worked on, doing stuff with knives and everything.
Wow.
And Ma will tell you that's probably one of her favorite stories. In Sunday school, I think they had us in a circle, and I probably wasn't more than 4 or 5 at this point. And they asking everybody what your favorite TV show was or what your favorite cartoon was. Barney, Teletubbies, whatever. And I said Food Network. So it has been, and PBS. There was a show on PBS. I was obsessed with it. So it's always been food for a while. I thought that was going to be long term, but you know, I realized that food and being in the kitchen and cooking is my break, my kind of like, respite from everything.
Right.
And you don't want to turn that into work.
Right.
So,
right. You don't want to take the fun out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's good because everybody needs somewhere to gather themselves and to relax and
and
enjoy.
that is decompression.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's sanctuary for me.
I love that. Now, you mentioned your grandmom and your Aunt Anne, and of course, your mom cooks a lot. So you were surrounded by a lot of good cooks, a lot of good food.
Yeah, and I think anybody on the island that grew up on the island, it's you're not going to get away from it.
Mm-mm.
It's just a fixture.
Yes.
Anywhere down east, but the island has every section, community, what have you, has their own thing. The island has its own thing, and I definitely got steeped in that from an early age.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now, your favorite kind of food, is it seafood or is it what would you say is your favorite thing to cook?
I mean, now at this point, I think it's more seasonal. I wouldn't say that I definitely have, everybody has what they would call their last meal, and I have a favorite in that aspect of my ideal meal. Yes, I've got that set. But as far as having a favorite thing to cook, I mean, it totally depends. Seasonally, really, is kind of how I operate.
So do you enjoy all kinds of cooking? Like some people love to cook meals, but they do not like baking or things like that. Or do you just like to kind of dabble in all of it?
I probably would say I dabble in all of it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that it's the easiest way to kind of bridge the gap between yourself and somebody that you might not know. And so in that aspect, I just find that that's like a really powerful thing and also a really enjoyable thing for me. So, I love bacon and just as much as I love going out and cooking something on the grill.
Yeah.
Grilling.
Oh, yes.
So,
okay. I love that. So when you were growing up and probably even now, I know like in our family, we have traditions and we have things. And of course, it always was centered around food. Would you say that was true for y'all? Did you get together and everybody bring food, or did you get together and grandma cook everything? How did y'all handle that?
Yeah, for sure. When all the cousins were young and they were, we'd get together for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
That was just because there were so many of us. That was the two times where it was a definite. We all got together and all convened to Granny's house and had whatever. Usually it'd be an oyster roast that time of year, or I mean, just a mix of things, but definitely like the oyster roast would be the central focus. Everybody would be outside, get their fill, and then because some people can make a meal out of oysters. I know I can, but some people you got to have something just like eating crabs, hard crabs. Like you're not going to get full off of that usually, so you got to go in and eat the rest of the stuff as dessert.
Right.
But I would say that was probably the two fixtures in the year as far as like ritualistic tradition in that aspect.
Would people bring stuff like to it? Because that's how we usually handled it. Like we knew that Aunt Connie would bring something, such and such, and everyone kind of had their favorite dish that each aunt would make. Yeah.
And nobody deviated, because if you did it well, you had to bring it again because
somebody'd be mad if you didn't.
Somebody'd be mad if you didn't.
Yeah, that's right. That is true.
Yeah, not deviate for what you're good at.
No, that's a big don't go experimenting.
Yep.
Yeah. What can you share about a favorite memory that you have from maybe a lesson from your granny cooking with her, or your mom or Ann, or like anything that you can share with us there?
It would probably be, just because this was a big thing or a important thing for me when I went off to college. And 3 hours away from home is still far enough that you're like, and I didn't think I was going to get homesick. And then fast forward to about 2-3 months in, I was homesick.
Oh yeah, same here.
And so we can kind of unpack what food meant in that aspect. But to directly answer your question, I don't know if you know what turn cakes or turn bread is. I'm sure you do.
Oh, yes.
And so Granny would fix that for me, of a weekend, or if I'd come back from school and want something sweet. And she usually had the regular stuff filled, in the pantry or whatnot. But I don't know. I think it was a combination of hearing her talk about how that was their treat. And I thought it was, well, I don't care about a honey bun. Now I want what you had.
Right.
And so she would fix that and then put molasses on it.
Oh.
And so I don't think that would be a conventional thing for, a 5, 6, 7-year-old, 8 right on up. No. But I got a taste for that early. And then when she taught me how to make it, I was like, well,
yeah, I'm set now.
Probably not many people making turn cakes, turn bread on a daily, weekly basis now. And I don't, but having that, it's just makes it apparent what that means and why it's important.
Yes.
So.
And you mentioned about being away from home and being homesick and all that. You're right. Food is a comfort when you're in those situations. I was very homesick when I went to college. I thought I wanted to get as far away from home as I could, and then I got there and couldn't get home fast enough. What would you turn to when you were homesick? What kind of foods would you turn to?
Well, I don't know that it was so much foods.
Okay.
Because Raleigh, I don't know if you can.
No,
you could probably imagine that.
I was in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's not. I could get a hold of stuff, but
it weren't the same kind of stuff.
It wasn't the same kind of stuff. To bring a point into all this and an example, my end all meal that I'm going out of here is the last thing I want to eat is fresh meat and rutabagas.
Oh.
And I guess I should go ahead and say what fresh meat is, because not everybody's.
Yes, explain.
And tie it into the story. So fresh meat is just uncured meat. It would be sold down here. It would be sold to Billy's as fresh meat. You say that to somebody from off, they're probably going to think,
what?
I thought all meat was fresh.
I don't want spoiled meat.
Right. And so I don't think that I went in somewhere and asked if they had fresh meat. I just went in and thought, well, that's how it was packaged to Billy's. Surely they'd have something similar, or I'd at least be able to look at it and tell. So get over that hurdle and figure out something comparable. In the winter months, I want to cook that. Can't get home, and that's what I have a craving. That's what I'm fixated on. Figure out the fresh meat hurdle, and then you got to try and find a rutabaga in Raleigh.
Right.
So, yeah, that I would say that's probably one of the dishes when I figured out, or you can bring the stuff back with you, and that's what I would do, just to have it. But just as much as the food aspect, and I ended up not great podcast material, but I ended up bringing them with me. So I'll talk through it. Having the Island Born and Bred cookbook with me, but specifically Granny's copy.
Yes.
Which I keep under lock and key because it's a little bit worn and tattered.
Folks, I wish you could see this. It has been used time and time and time again.
And there's not many things that I have her handwriting on, except for one recipe that I had her write down.
Wow.
But there's her handwriting in that book too. And then just by happenstance, I was in a used bookstore in Raleigh and found a brand new copy of the Born and Bred cookbook.
No way.
So, yeah.
Wow. This past Christmas, I couldn't believe that I hadn't gifted it before to my kids.
Yeah.
And I was going through and I was like, I've never given them one of those. So they got one for this past Christmas, and it was way too late, folks. You needed to gift it sooner because they were 27 and almost 25 now. So yeah, you need to get them all a copy of this, because this cookbook, the recipes in it are amazing, but the stories and the love that was poured into this book. But I just can't get over how that's got to be a treasure.
Yeah. It's seen better days, and I'll thumb through it from time to time. But it's definitely held together with a hope and a prayer
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
no, that's a family treasure right
Yeah.
there.
So that
Yeah.
that was kind of what tethered me when I couldn't get in the kitchen, and if I need a break from homework or studying or whatever, I just thumb back through, and because just as much, like you said, just as much as the recipes, the stories in it, and then you get to look through, and everybody, name wise,
Yes.
everybody is listed in there that you would know. So
Yep, know or heard of,
Yeah.
or yeah. I love that cookbook so much. We have got to talk about something that several people have mentioned to me when I have said your name, and they said, "Oh, you've got to ask him about," and I think you know I'm going to go to a fig cake. So explain to me where this came from, who taught you, and like what is it?
yeah, so that's goodness, yeah.
How has this been a long time thing?
This figs have been a long time thing.
Oh,
I
yeah?
think anybody, and you probably attest to this. I mean, do your mom and daddy have a fig tree?
They do not, but my grandmom and granddaddy did, and
Yeah.
my great granddaddy did, and I thought it was candy on a tree. I mean,
Yeah.
like I've always loved a fig.
Yeah.
So, so that's where you started picking from a tree, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can hardly throw a dart anywhere on the island and not hit a fig tree, or anywhere down east. And it wasn't until kind of later on, probably sophomore junior year of college, when I started getting kind of the history of figs down east and Ocracoke, and just got really interested in, everybody had, their grandma had a tree, they get a piece off of it, they take it to their house, and then they root it, get it started, and then they have figs.
Yeah.
Or fig preserves, or whole, canning whole figs. And it's just, for whatever reason, probably because it's fruit, easy to grow down here, does well, and can be preserved, that it's kind of been a fixture in the communities. And if you go to Ocracoke, they've got a fig festival, and it's like, they
I've never been to that, but I've always wanted to go.
yeah, it's it's a big deal, and they've got their fig cake competition over there, and it's like with anything else, everybody's got their own way of doing it, and everybody's got their own recipe. And I think the stories, again, with the fig tree aspect, and everybody having one that was behind their house, or behind old home
They're
place,
easy to access.
yeah. It's just interesting to me as far as the history, the genealogy of it, and being able to tie it in with the family aspect. So fast forward to, my interest in cooking. She'd cook fig bread, fig cakes, she'd can. I mean, that was...
So do y'all have a fig tree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like four or five.
4 or 5 of them? Yeah.
Granny, she had one behind the old house on the island, and when she moved, she's planted another one, and has a really nice one behind her house. Fig cakes, as obviously, goes hand in hand with, I'm interested in cooking, I'm going to gravitate towards that recipe.
Right. And you loved them, I'm guessing. You enjoyed you had eaten them.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that, I would say, if you could call it a cold weather cake, if that makes like a fall winter.
Right. Right.
Because it's spiced. It's a spiced cake, so it's like a applesauce cake, or in a bundt pan.
Right.
And they last forever. So they're kind of a fixture as far as that time of year. And so I kind of dabbled with recipes. I looked at the one that was in Born and Bred. I used Ma's recipe that she'd always used, and then tweaked my own. And then became the person in contact for, if you need a fig cake, call Kenny. And so
that's what I hear.
Typical fashion, you become good at something and you can never get clear of it. And so we'll bring Karen Amsbacher into the conversation, because we had post Dorian. So what year was that? 2019?
2019, yeah.
Yeah. So post Dorian, I was still up in Raleigh at that time. Dorian had come through. Ocracoke was bad off, as we know.
Yeah.
And they had an event not far from where I lived in Raleigh, downtown. Kind of like it was a ticketed event that local seafood had put on as a fundraiser.
Okay, for Ocracoke?
Yeah. Okay. So it was just a fundraiser to kind of funnel and get the word out that they needed, some assistance, or at least, get their story heard.
Right.
And it was a set menu with some really great chefs in Raleigh, but the dessert portion was vacant.
Oh, no.
Well, you have a fundraiser for Ocracoke. What dessert are we going to choose? Fig cake.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And Karen calls me, and she gave me the date. She said, do you want to come? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm be in town. I don't have to work. I'd be happy to. And she said, well, what do you think about cooking some fig cakes? And I said, that's fine. Yeah, I can do that. I said, get a gauge of how many people and all that. And then she kind of started unpacking it, and 15 fig cakes later in my Raleigh apartment, not to pat myself on the back, but the consensus was that it was the star of the menu that night. So I'll take that.
I love that.
She came to pick me up in her already loaded down Tacoma, little gray Tacoma. She comes blasting into the apartment complex. And I took 15 individual fig cakes down in cake boxes, and and off we go to this event. So, it's just like this podcast. I'm sure she it looped me into the conversation. I tend to get brought into stuff, but I'm fine with it because that was.
Well, I will. Okay, since we're airing it here, and we're putting her under the bus here. Karen was the first one that told me. She said, you got to talk to Kitty about fig cakes.
Yep.
But I have had a couple other people mention your fig cakes too.
Yep.
Talking in passing.
And so, and then after that, like the shrimp fry in July, I'll do some for the bake sale. And
okay, well that makes sense because some of the folks said that they had some of your fig cake, and that would probably be what, because I'm like, why? Where is he selling this stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that makes sense. Well, now I've got to come out here and try. Are you going to have them again out here in July?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're
it's a staple, huh?
Easily. Yeah. The hardest part is getting a hold of figs. Yeah. To be honest, so you have to start the year before, just about, if you want to do any quantity, because you have to. Technically, it's supposed to be fig preserves, so you have to get the figs put up and processed, and then use them that way. So,
well, when you had such a short notice there for that fundraiser, how in the world did you manage that?
It was like,
did Karen help you find preserves?
She did, and I don't want to say drug deal, but that's as close as I can think to how it was. It was like trying to peddle some kind of illicit substance, because I had people dropping jars of figs off at work in Raleigh. There was one food writer that worked to the News and Observer, or floated in that circle, and she the word got out to her, and she has a place on Ocracoke, so she has a fig tree, and she had put some up, and it was like,
oh my gosh,
it was funny because you need, for each cake is probably about a cup, and that adds up quick. So
oh my goodness, wow, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
So do you preserve? Do you do canning and stuff too?
Yeah, I don't do as much. It's kind of sporadic. I would say that getting a hold of figs is probably the only time in the year that I do any amount. On the regular, not really. But when, like July and August, when the figs start coming off,
Yeah. Okay. So, and that is when they start coming off. So late summer.
Yep. Late summer.
Gotcha.
If the rain is good.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, I remember so many times Mom and Dad talking about, of course, they didn't have candy, when they were little, but what a treat it was when those figs would start getting ready to eat, and to have that fig, and like you would just savor every bite of that fig. It was like a candy bar to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
They are.
So good.
Especially that time of year too, when it's hot, and I don't know, something about it.
Yeah, it's just perfect. But fig preserves are some of my favorite kind of preserves. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I am so excited I can't wait now to try your fig cake. I can't believe that I haven't done it already. I've
Yep.
been missing out, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you have any other favorites favorite things that you like to cook, or if you're coming to something, they're like, oh, please do this?
I would say that, I mean, it's hard
You
because,
just enjoy everything.
yeah, there's not really, I like bringing people into the story of it because,
I love the way you said that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not so much, this dish versus another. There's dishes that stand out to me, that like rutabagas or stewed ducks or
Yes.
stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and when I stop and think about the list, a lot of it is stewed, which
Mm-hmm.
might say something for us. We do a
Yeah,
lot of
we do a
stewed
lot of
stuff.
stewing, but it's hard to beat a
Yeah.
good gravy.
And the one thing that I did, well, okay, now that I'm, it's opened it up now. I would say charcoal mullets and taking them up and doing
Yes.
that
So
because
good.
I worked in a restaurant in Raleigh downtown, and it was a Chinese dim sum restaurant,
Okay.
world renowned, was on the Forbes list. I mean, it was a cool place to work. And they had a whole fish on the menu, steamed whole fish, which would typically be a snapper or, it generally was a snapper. Well, I remember going into work and they said we have a new feature fish on. I was like, oh, okay, let's talk about something different. That's my wheelhouse. I was like, I wonder what they ended up getting. And I'll never forget, we sat down to the table. And we sat down to the table to do, like, it wasn't family meal, but we'd have, the pre-shift conversation or whatever. And they roll out this fish in front of me, and it's a jumping mullet.
Oh,
Steamed.
Okay.
Skin on, scale, head on, everything steamed.
Okay.
I said, that's a new one on me. And they called it a striped mullet. And I was like, uh-huh. And knowing what I know about that fish, if you don't like fishy fish, then you're not going to like that.
No.
Because essentially it's a big sardine, really.
Yeah.
And
oily
it's great charcoal or fried.
Because it's drier.
Yep.
Then. Yeah.
But steamed, I was like, phew, all right, we'll see how this goes. They didn't sell many of them that night.
No. Did you let them on know that
I
you
did,
knew?
because I think it's a disservice to somebody that's going to pay $45 for a dish, and they're expecting, snapper is a world away from jumping mullet.
Totally opposite.
So it was just interesting to me. But as far as and then I took some up there and charcoaled them.
For them?
And I was like, this is how they should be.
Oh.
And they were blown away. I mean, it's just...
Well, good for you.
So having that, this kind of ties back into the storytelling of it. And also to not let somebody from Raleigh try and do anything with something they don't know about.
What it is. Well, charcoal mullet's hard to beat.
On the beach too, if you're over to the Cape.
Yeah. Of course, the Vienna sausage is good over there.
Yep.
But yeah. Oh, steamed.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
Yeah. But that and soft crabs, I mean, I don't know. There's just so much. Stewed conchs, that's probably another one of those that I'm like, that's my last meal.
Yeah.
If you can get a hold of them. And that was one that nobody had definitely had. I mean, I'd take a lot of this and do it up there. And
would you?
Yeah.
And share it with your friends and stuff. And oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
they would say, this is what my friends, when I moved away, they would say, and you left there, why?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know.
But I mean, in that aspect, and that, or to comment on that, it gives you a greater appreciation for sure.
It surely does.
Because I know that, well, as I said at the beginning, it wasn't more than 2 or 3 months in where I was like, getting a little homesick now. And you start, I mean, that's where my interest really started getting piqued as far as cooking and recipes, but Down East and Down East heritage in general, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was a freshman, And of course, they talk differently, and nothing would make me any madder than when they say, and they'd give you a word, But when they would start asking questions about where I was from and my heritage, that's when I started appreciating them more.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until that point, I didn't really have to reflect on it a whole lot.
No, yeah. And it was, it's such, everybody has their own thing, but you start to realize that what we have or what we grew up with is so niche, is so different. I mean, it's just different.
And it's different in such a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am so sad because, our time is up.
Wow.
I know. It's like I blinked.
Yeah.
That was so much fun. Will you come back sometime?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll pick a topic and talk about something else because this has been really fun.
Yeah, I can talk.
Yeah,
no doubt I can talk.
And I can too. So we make a good pair.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, and hopefully I see you sooner. But if not, then will you be here with your feed cakes in July? Do you usually help? I know you help out here a lot.
I will have them ready. I actually will be going for the actual shrimp fry.
Thing. Okay.
But they'll be here.
But they'll be here.
They will be here. I will not.
Okay. Well, I'll at least get a taste of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us again to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Basden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in again next week as we continue remembering, sharing, and learning together. Until then, stay safe and be kind.